Hey, this is Power Card, aka Project Pat, and you're listening to the Baltimore Beatdown Podcast, the best Ravens podcast on the planet.
It's pretty incredible. In fact, it's marvelous. Thank you, guys.
All right, welcome on back to another edition of the Baltimore Beatdown Podcast. It is Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. My name is Jake Luke. I'm joined on my screen by Spencer Nathaniel Schultz. How you doing, bud?
Doing well. It was a great Super Bowl. I like what Johnny Kinsley, who does the Deep Ball Project every year, said about the Super Bowl, that it was an ironic game, the way that, defenses struggled to keep up with these big-time passing offenses all year. It felt like maybe COVID had a little bit to do with that, and then it just got flipped on its head, and one of the most prolific passing offenses of all time gets held out of the end zone for 4 quarters. And it was a really eye-opening Super Bowl, I guess, in many ways. The Chiefs, just sputtered out of control, and the Bucs were a complete balanced team. And as we've talked so much about the Ravens and wanting them to be balanced in what they do, they achieved that defensively this year to an extent and not offensively. And I think it was a great example of a team that was balanced in scheme, balanced in talent, complete. They didn't have any weak points throughout their roster. You can't really pick on any of their positional groups, and they deserve to win the Super Bowl because of that, because of the roster construction, because of being multiple schematically. Things like being able to play man and rush 4 or blitz and play zone behind it. They showed both of those yesterday a little bit. They didn't blitz much, but a couple fun ones. And hats off to Arians. I love the fact that, Bomani Jones had a fun thing today about how shout out to Bruce Arians for allowing there to be enough black coaches where they can get confused for each other in the press conference after the Super Bowl. I love that. I love that there were 2 females on that coaching staff. I love that there were, a litany of black coaches on that coaching staff, and that they won and showed that you can win with anyone, regardless of what color they are or whatever. Any possible thing you can think of. So I love that. Love that for the Bucs. Brady wins the 7th. It was fun game overall.
Yeah, true meritocracy in that sense. He's always been kind of at the forefront of that, being a champion for more diversity amongst his coaching staffs, and kind of just a guy who has lived a lot of different lives and been amongst a lot of different people. There's a lot of black influence on the way that he talks and stuff like that, which I think is pretty cool. And he's just kind of that dude. I love Bruce Arians. Glad to see him finally get that ring. After a lot of weird kind of turbulent spells amongst his career as a head coach. But good for him. Good for Tom Brady, obviously, who should be mentioned as maybe the straw that stirs the drink. And anyone arguing about his GOAT status at this point, you're kind of just pissing in the wind, in my opinion. The guy is 7 rings deep. He's, like I said, the straw that stirs the drink there. And also, Pat Mahomes not invincible. We learned last night, which you're not going to suck me all the way in quite yet as to whether that's going to be the case in the AFC next season, but it's a good starting point for the offseason, in my opinion. Didn't really have too many takes on the Super Bowl outside of that, so I'm glad you summed it up as eloquently as you did, because I did want to also open the show with a little bit of a shout out to not really a friend of the show, but kind of a mutual friend of the show, recently passing away over the weekend, Chris Wesseling, a longtime around the NFL blogger and podcaster. Just wanted to kind of throw something out there because I know there is some mutual listenership between our show and theirs, and I'm a longtime listener of ATN going all the way back to 2014, and Wes was just a really intelligent, kind of curious mind, a funny guy, great on the microphone, just really kind of educational, really taught me a lot about football, and I think is a big influence on the way that I approach this show, not taking things too seriously, kind of always trying to be curious, always trying to find the right angles to take things from. He was a huge influence on mine. He's a huge influence on a lot of people. There's a massive outpouring of support going on for him and his wife, Lakeisha, and his son, Link, now, who he just recently had before he passed. So just wanted to throw something out there in regards to that because I loved Wes. Was really sad to see him go after his second battle with cancer, and he's in a better place now.
Yeah, especially that second battle. Just unfortunate. He was a survivor and seemed to have it under control at one point. Heart goes out to his family and his little boy. So definitely a tough loss, and hearts, thoughts, prayers, all with him and his family. And it is terrible, unfortunate, but hopefully his impact will live on for a long time. And he provided tons of smiles and tons of fun times and moments for so many people. So he'll be missed sorely.
Absolutely. I think it'll live on through people like us kind of continuing to approach football in the way that we do, authentic, fun, fresh, smart, or hopefully we are those things. And I know there's plenty of people who are those things that were influenced by him. So I just wanted to quickly throw that out there as we segue into our next segment here, which is that the Ravens made some coaching hires that I think a lot of people were keying in on. I think two of them in particular were Keith Williams, who's the pass game specialist now at Wideouts on Twitter. T. Martin, the wide receivers coach, one of the Brady Six, funny enough, one of the Tennessee quarterback, I believe, right after Peyton Manning. And then Jason Brooks as the assistant defensive line coach and Jay Peterson as the assistant linebackers coach.
Peterson, I don't know a ton on, but the other three, obviously Clarence Brooks' son takes over now. You love to see that. Brooks, probably the best positional coach that the Ravens have ever had for a long time, and I'm really glad to see his legacy live on within the Ravens, first and foremost. And I have no doubt that his son is well-versed and going to be an absolute force as a coach, as he was. And then the wide receivers coaches, the pass game specialist and then the wide receivers coach. To me, those two, Williams and Martin, show that, as we mentioned kind of with Sarah and have been hitting on lately, that the system needs to be looked at and fixed, and there needs to be, college segueing into NFL technical skill coaches on the Baltimore Ravens staff. It feels like maybe they expect these guys to come in, and guys like Duvernay, guys like Boykin get a little overwhelmed, and we don't see a ton of growth. We don't see anyone become, an ascending star out of nowhere ever in that room. Torrey Smith, Hollywood Brown, and that's it. And, I think Torrey definitely developed a little bit, but not a ton. I don't think Torrey developed a ton. He was a vertical threat. He could throttle down, run those comeback routes and things like that. And, occasionally go over the middle of the field. Hollywood doesn't look like he has progressed a ton. I think he was outstanding at Oklahoma, rehabbing from the foot injury, but we haven't seen real growth in their game that has improved, or different areas that they've gotten better with. I feel like Torrey Smith was ready to go, Hollywood Brown ready to go, and Torrey ends up being a great big time receiver within that scheme, but just a vertical guy. So getting guys improved and working on being multiple in their releases, being multiple in their understandings of leverage and things like that. Just felt like it was good blood to bring in with Martin coming from USC by way of Tennessee as well. Robert Woods, Nelson Aguilar, Juju Smith-Schuster, tons of guys he's been with. Marquise Lee as well at USC. So guys that, have come in, shined at USC, and then continued to grow. He's a part of the development there. And then Williams has worked with the best. He is a trainer. He has worked with the absolute best in the business. Davontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, a litany of guys, very well-respected trainer. So having them come in, having them be outside of that Harbaugh coaching tree, a thing that, one of the very, very few things that I've kind of criticized John Harbaugh's era in Baltimore is not bringing in enough outside perspective into that coaching staff at times. I guess, Mark Trestman, a guy that was outside, but that didn't go so well. A lot of the times it's been, like Rob Ryan ends up being, that hire to me is just like, all right, like we're rehashing, some old relationships here and there and different things. And
it's a sick hire, to be fair. It's a lot of fun, but yes, it does kind of reek of that stuff, to be fair.
And you've got Zach Orr on your staff, who's going to go down and, he's an ascending coach. That one, I was a little upset to see Zach Orr go, but great to see them taking initiative, and it looks like they're examining that system of getting wide receivers integrated and improving them and working with them. And, I watched David Culley run some drills and things. I didn't see a ton of practice. I didn't see a ton of David Culley alone, but I would think that having a guy like Keith Williams who's going to be able to come in and really demonstrate almost and show and talk about releases and be a little bit more
as much as Culley is
maybe.
as much as we're both rooting for Culley, it was a lot of he's the CEO, he's this guy, he's the leader, but it's not like this is X what he did, Y what he did, Z what he did to help develop these receivers who you mentioned have not developed, and obviously that has borne itself out. Now you've got a guy in Williams who I don't know much about, but it seems like there is nuts and bolts technical stuff that he has done to help guys like Tyreek Hill develop. And, maybe that will work, maybe it will not, but it just seems like a much better approach to an organization that has had trouble developing this position, and bringing in a guy who's going to be able to not only do that, but also he's a little bit younger. Looks like he's going to be able to relate to these guys in a way that Culley potentially wasn't. I think it's kind of a bang up hire from that respect.
Especially the two of them in tandem, I think will give two fresh. I'm not positive on this, but I don't think Martin and Williams have association.
I don't think so, no.
Maybe, they know each other and have.
I do think Martin also does. I think Martin does kind of bring that CEO, kind of capability or whatever you want to call it with him, because I don't know if you have seen that, or I'm sure you have seen that Brady 6 documentary on ESPN, but if you haven't, Google the Brady 6, go watch it. He is one of the 6 quarterbacks that was drafted ahead of Tom Brady in 2000 coming out of Tennessee. And obviously he didn't work out as an NFL quarterback, but I thought he came across really well in that documentary. And I think that was filmed in 2009, right around the time he was getting his start in high school coaching. So he's got a passion for this. He seems like a good leader, a positive guy, and another younger face that they're going to be bringing in there at that position, which you mentioned them working in tandem. I think they're going to be playing off each other pretty well in that respect.
And Martin's been an offensive coordinator. He's been a pass game coordinator as well. So I think the two of those combined, you're investing in some fresh outside perspective to bring in and get this passing game from the technical perspective. I like the way you said nuts and bolts perspective, going down to brass tacks and being able to bring some guys in and send them up, to the point where they're leaving Baltimore getting 4-year, $45 million contracts receiver instead of every single receiver that leaves Baltimore, basically outside of Torrey Smith, kind of being a, journeyman type at best. So hopefully they're able to get a little bit of a factory going, and this is the first step. So, they get those 2 picks from Culley, and those are going to be huge. That 3rd round pick this year is huge because there was a long time the Ravens were going to be without a pick from that 2nd round to that 4th round. So that helps out as well, and bringing in some fresh blood. So all good things, hopefully. I like it a lot.
Yeah, and we're going to see if they get more draft picks this year, because it looks like at this point, after another little, I don't even know what to call it, another little situation on Twitter, Orlando Brown Jr. seems to be probably as good as gone at this point this coming offseason. He tweets out I believe a story or a excerpt from a story from friend of the show, Daniel Oyefusi from the Baltimore Sun. He says in the tweet, "It's never been about money. I'm so appreciative for this organization and all my teammates. I couldn't thank DaCosta enough. He's an incredible football mind, one of the best men I know. I want to live out the dream my dad had for me." And basically the story is that his dad always wanted him to play left tackle because that's the best position on the offensive line, and he wanted him to be better than him. So that's where all this is allegedly coming from. I think we might both have, I don't know really how to phrase it, but maybe some misgivings, maybe not the right word, maybe some questions about how all this has started to bubble up.
Yeah, it feels like he is dead set on playing the left tackle position. And there's tons of discourse back and forth on how important that is. And I guess one thing I did think about the other day was that the Ravens did move him to left tackle when Ronnie Stanley went down. So the Ravens certainly value having a better left tackle, more capable left tackle than right tackle. And that's fine. That's dandy. But in today's NFL, you're playing from shotgun. Quarterback's eyes are straight forward, not, a bunch of, especially the Ravens, are not dropping back from under center a ton with your head turned one way and not able to see the pressure behind you. Whatever, don't have to get into all that, but ultimately you can't tell the man what to do, how to think. He is his own person. So if he wants to go play on the left side, then he's going to have to do that elsewhere. It's a dual-edged sword this year. I'm getting into the offensive line prospects. We're going to be trying to do a weekly breakdown position by position. Might want to save offensive line for a little bit later, so I have some real time to get into the thick of that and things like that on this show. But ultimately, this seems like the best tackle class in a long time. Slater, Sewell, Cosme, Tevin Jenkins, Mayfield out of Michigan, like Dylan Radins, like there are James Hudson. There are legit tackles in this class. The best I can remember, really, in terms of depth and having some pretty good talent at the top. Last year there was the top 4, but that was a little bit more talented, I guess, actually. But there was no depth. There were not tackles to be had in the late rounds. That was not a thing. That is not going to be the case this year. There's guys I'm still not even talking about. They're going to go in the second round. Eichenberg out of Notre Dame could be a first-round guy. Like, there's tackles everywhere. What that's going to do is maybe decrease the price that the Ravens will get in return for Orlando Brown if they want to trade him, while also putting them in a better position to replace him through the draft if they want to do so. So if they're able to get a team like, let's say, the Chargers is kind of the ultimate situation to part with a first-round pick, I would love that. I would think that would be awesome. I wish Orlando Brown didn't want to go, first of all, having, the classic one in the hand, two in the bush. But if he's got to go and the Ravens can get a first-round pick somewhere from someone in this draft, freeing up another $3 million for Orlando Brown, that would be not that terrible. I love Orlando Brown as a player. I love his story. I love all of that stuff. Him playing 78 right tackle where his dad played. Clearly that is not what he wants to ultimately do. He is not Ronnie Stanley. He is not better than Ronnie Stanley. He is not that incredibly close in terms of technical ability to Ronnie Stanley, who everyone refers to as perfectionist. Of course, the ankle injury throws a little bit of a monkey wrench in there, but freak accident, people want to be like, oh, Stanley can't hold up. He got rolled up on, man. Like, all right. Like, what do you want to do here? What is he supposed to have stronger ankles when a grown man like twists into his body? I don't know what you want there, but ultimately a rock in a hard place a little bit. It's a weird situation. There's a lot of people who seem to think it's just a bargaining tactic for him to get more money out of Eric DeCosta. I don't feel like that's the case. That's the speculation part, but weird situation. The Ravens news cycle never ends. It's not quite the Earl Thomas drama.
The fact that he's out here, tweeting that, like, this is not about money, like that makes me pretty clear that it's not. And like, I don't know where the whole I'm a left tackle thing came from, because we conveniently never really heard anything about that, like prior to the season or prior to him playing left tackle. But in fairness, maybe it's him playing it that prompted that. But yeah, it's like this is not coming from his agent. It's not like leaking out through Twitter. Like, he's very openly saying, this is what it is. Like, this is the deal. I'm leaving, and that's that. Like, I do respect it from that standpoint. It's also really funny. Like, you mentioned Ronnie Stanley. Just got finished reading Next Man Up. I got an interview with the author coming out next week, John Feinstein. So stay tuned for that. It's a really good chat. The book is about the 2004 Ravens season. And like, it's so funny because J.O. Ogden is like this, he's the left tackle. Obviously, he's a very cerebral, kind of laid back, aloof kind of guy. And like, he's the steady presence at left tackle. And then at right tackle, you got Zeus Sr., who's like blowing up, and there's always like all this drama around him. I just think it's kind of funny that like the more things change, the more they stay the same. Like, you got two of the exact same guys, like 17 years later or whatever, at the same positions. And now, unfortunately, it is resulting in Zeus Jr. wanting to leave. If you can hang on to a player like that, you certainly want to. But like I hit on there, it seems like he's pretty dead set on making his way out of town.
Yeah, we can only speculate. We don't know if it is a tactic, if it isn't, but to be making this big a deal out of it for no reason. The only thing I can think of is maybe, it is different motor skills, different feet, hitting righty, hitting lefty, whatever. The mechanics of it are different. Maybe he just felt damn good on that left side, kicking with the right foot and sliding, being able to push off that way, and felt better. And he feels like he's better on that side. So if that's it, that's it. He was an All-American, I think, twice at Oklahoma, playing left tackle, protecting Baker Mayfield. So, yeah, it's just a weird situation. I guess something's going to come of it. Hopefully Eric DeCosta if Eric DeCosta is able to get a first rounder out of it, I'm happy. People have kind of gone a little crazy with thinking, number one, that Orlando Brown is Laramie Tunsil, which he is not quite. Number two, that Bill O'Brien still exists in this NFL. The Texans got pretty scolded for not having Laramie Tunsil already signed to an extension, thus giving him full leverage in contract negotiations, paying him a lot more than even Ronnie Stanley got, and giving up a return that still has been giving, as the Dolphins will be picking number 3 overall with that pick from the Texans. So that did not go well. That might be a little bit of a warning for other teams about what not to do in terms of acquiring a left tackle for that much draft capital. If they got like a first and a third, that would be a haul, in my opinion, a real haul. So that would be okay. But it's just at this point, in talking Ravens' future, if and when he moves on, then the offensive line is going to be a lot different next year. You got to think there's going to be a new center in there. I can't think they're happy with Makari or Skura returning to play that position. Skura is a free agent, I believe, as well. And Makari, I think, restricted, if I'm not mistaken. So, could be 3 new guys in there next year. Ben Powers, I think, was, I was all for Ben Powers. I was huge on the Ben Powers train. He was all right. I would not be opposed to sticking someone else in there. I don't think he played well enough to really thwart off any thought of someone else coming in and playing. But at the same time, I think he did show the Ravens he can be serviceable. So they're going to be looking potentially at least a new center and a new right tackle. And that's a lot. Offensive line is very continuity based. Any offensive line coach, I think, will tell you one of the most important things in terms of an offensive line playing well is having the same guys for a while, having the same guys able to understand how to pass off and who's passing off, where the other man's going to be. Huge. So expecting some changes. Hopefully, if the Ravens are able to go get a David Andrews or a Corey Linsley, I think that would be a really strong place to start, kind of negating the need and then trading Orlando Brown in a super strong tackle class. If they can get a first rounder for him, I think they might come out of this a little bit better than before. And there's even more impacts from it. Like, everyone's been factoring in, like, all right, well, the Ravens are going to have to re-sign Orlando Brown and Marlon Humphrey and Ronnie Stanley and Mark Andrews. Who's the odd man out? Well, the odd man kind of stepped out on his own. So he's not gone yet. Jason LaConfora did say he would think there's a better chance that what is the backup quarterback of the Chiefs?
Chad Henne throwing a touchdown in the Super Bowl. I was down there at Frederick Keys with my kids. And shout out to RDT for a great impersonation. His is way better than mine.
Exactly. And JLC has not been missing lately. And we were a little bit wishy-washy. He's missed before, but he's been very good lately the last couple years in terms of his scoops. And then Brown kind of tweeted again. So it felt like it confirmed that
he's gone. Like, I just feel like he's gone,
Yeah. And it's weird. Has there ever been a Raven who wanted out, especially under Harbaugh? Who was the last Raven who wanted out of Baltimore?
Can't think of one.
Exactly. So weird. We posted on the Instagram, and there's a lot of ship him to the Jets,
which would be sick. We had some fun too with the fact that, like, Miami needs a tackle. Get him down there to play left tackle for the left-handed Tua Tagovailoa, which would be fucking sweet if he had to go down there and play the strong side, or what is effectively that down in Miami with lefty Tua. That would be fucking awesome.
Yeah, so you're not on the blind side, but you're playing on the left side. So
it's like, you wanted to be a left tackle. You got this team with all this draft capital that needs one. Why don't you get down there? Enjoy South Beach.
I'm sure he would. I'm sure
Orlando he would. Yeah, he would love it. And like, this is me. I'm having a little fun. I love the guy, for the record, and he can do what he wants. Like, players have.
It's been freaking awesome having him here over the last couple of years. It was such a great story, and he's played well, and the combine crap and all that stuff.
He's earned it. He can do what he wants, and this is the era of player leverage. We're here, and if he wants to force his way out, and God bless him. I hope he has success, but it would be a stroke of fun irony if he were to wind up playing left tackle for a left-handed quarterback.
It would be indeed. Jags have multiple first-round picks. They could use a tackle, possibly. Who knows? Going to be interesting to see how that pans out. If I was a betting man, which I am, and if I could get it on DraftKings, and DraftKings would work, and they would finally actually legalize the gambling in Maryland. They passed the legislature for it.
Shout out to the strip of I-83, which was seeing a lot of Spencer Schultz this past weekend.
It was going on up to Pennsylvania to get some bets in for the Super Bowl. I drive on up there. Cool, 17-minute drive from where I live, and park the car, get on my phone, pull up DraftKings, and lo and behold, their servers aren't working, and you can't make any bets. So it was about an hour of my time wasted. So thanks a lot, DraftKings. Thanks a lot. I don't know what's going on with Maryland. I voted to pass the Maryland State sports gambling, and here we are with 3 months past and none of that going on. Hopefully it's
I think that was always going to take a while.
It does. I think like when marijuana, like stuff like that, they still have to go in and pass the actual legislature when they're in, the House Congress or the state Congress is in effect, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Ultimately, screw me. Orlando Brown, where in the world is Orlando Brown going to go? That might be the burning question of this offseason. If that is the biggest deal that happens this offseason with Earl Thomas in hindsight and that whole situation from last year, that would be good. Content was great because of Earl Thomas. Clicks and downloads were great because of that, but hopefully no volatile situations like that again. And this is the big story of the offseason. That would be ideal.
Especially if it nets back some good draft compensation. So we're going to have plenty more on that as it continues to develop. But last one before we throw it over to our interview was the Ravens re-signed. This has been percolating for a while. Davontae Harris had been not speculating, but kind of just throwing it out that he was going to be re-signed. He finally tweeted out that it was signed, sealed, delivered, I believe over the weekend, and Ravens made it official. So bringing back depth cornerback Davontae Harris, who played pretty well for them down the stretch.
He is an athlete. He has great feet, smooth mover. Had that awesome recovery on the double move. You can see him with a great T-step and some lateral steps against Pittsburgh in that COVID game, and was like shot out of a cannon on special teams. So special teams value is absolutely there. Interesting to see how he factors into the equation. Amon Marshall coming back from injury. Tavon Young, we'll see, coming back from injury. Tavon Young took a pay cut, correct?
Was it last offseason?
I think he restructured and took a pay cut. I'm not positive. After his injury.
It's good radio. Let me see if I can find it.
I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, with Marshall potentially coming back from injury, with Tavon Young potentially coming back from injury, Harris re-signed, Jimmy Smith coming back, then obviously Peters and Humphrey. That is a deep and TBD cornerback room with some different combinations and possibilities. That's going to be fun to see how that one plays out with Harris signed. I was thinking maybe cornerback would be a sneaky second or third round pick for the Ravens, maybe even first round pick if a guy like J.C. Horn drops to them. But kind of feels like not anymore. It feels like it would be a little insane to draft a cornerback, especially early on.
So they're definitely going to do it. But glad that we could break that down and everything else down as we come to you guys here on a Tuesday. And without further ado, we would like to now throw it over to a really fun interview that we got the chance to conduct last week with Aaron Schatz, who's the founder of Football Outsiders. He's the creator of DVOA, which we reference plenty on here. We got him on here to talk for about a half hour, nice tight 30-minute interview talking about analytics in football, explaining DVOA a little bit for anyone who is I know I've seen some listeners maybe complaining about the fact that we reference it a lot without explaining what it is, which sorry, we're not going to do that. Just kind of look it up on your own if you want to know. But this does a good job clarifying why raw passing stats are really not that important. I thought it was a really fun chat with him. Yeah, he is one of arguably the pioneer of analytics, brought football analytics, so to speak, brought to the fans, and making that like a mainstream thing that results in, PFF being such a buzz topic all the time and things like that, and different websites that have popped up. I worked for Sports Info Solutions this past year. So it's a great conversation. Aaron, one of the original real pioneers of this kind of consumer football analytics industry, and great guy to talk to ahead of the Super Bowl, hear what he had to say, and some thoughts that he had on the Ravens moving forward. So without further ado, let's get to it. Yep. Before we jump into that, be sure to check us out on social media. You can follow the show on Twitter at Podcast Beatdown. My name is at Jake Luke, Louque on Twitter. Spencer is at Ravens for Dummies. Wherever you're listening to this, go ahead and subscribe to it. Leave us a 5-star rating and review if you can. Check out our YouTube page, Baltimore Beatdown, and follow the main account as well at Be More Beatdown. Finally got that verified blue check. So shout out to Kyle. Shout out to SB Nation for making that happen. But Like you said, without further ado, here is Aaron Schatz, and we will talk to you guys again later in the week.
See ya.
Arrivederci. All right, we now welcome on a very special guest, somebody that I was just saying before we got going here is maybe a little bit of a bucket lister of mine, and I would assume Spencer's as well. It is Aaron Schatz. He's the creator, I believe, of Football Outsiders, head of Football Outsiders, contributor to ESPN. I feel like you do a million things. Aaron, how's it going, man?
I'm good. Yeah, I do a million things. Right now, I do one thing, which is working on the Super Bowl. But usually I do like a million things and cover all 32 teams. Right now, it's like so much. Once you get to the end, it's so much on the last two teams. It's actually a little refreshing to talk about someone else a little bit.
Well, I'm glad you could hop on and make it happen with us. And I guess let's get into that. So starting off, we like to get a little bit of background on our guests and kind of their work. So if you could briefly sort of sum up your relationship with the sport of football and kind of how you came to work in this football media sphere, how would you do that for our audience?
Yeah, I've been doing this now for 18 years, believe it or not. I started Football Outsiders in 2003, so we're the original football analytics site. There really wasn't anybody doing football analytics before we started. I was basically just a fan who had some questions, and I decided I would start counting numbers and box scores to figure out whether, it meant anything to establish the run or not. That was the first question I started with, and I ended up with this big database of every play in the league in 2002, and I started creating some stats off it, and that's where DVOA came from, which is our main metric, and we launched the site in 2003, and I've been doing this ever since.
Yeah, we have been big fans for a long time. Super excited to have you on the show, as we said, offline. But, starting things off and getting into it, it's been interesting since then to watch the role of analytics really grow. Exponentially might not even be an appropriate enough word, even though it's an extreme word, into how it's been mainstreamed the last couple of years. And the reality is that it's been going on for way longer than that, within teams and within the structure of organizations. And how would you explain to the uninitiated what analytics in football looks like and how teams use them to the best of your knowledge in the year 2021 as we're living and breathing now?
I mean, the basic idea of analytics is just to look at data rather than just making assumptions based on, whims or memories of specific plays. A good example is that we tend to remember the extremes and forget the big, wide, average middle of performance. We remember a player's best and worst plays, or, the best thing you ever saw happen on 4th and 1, or the worst mistake you ever saw happen on 4th and 1. And you forget about like all the other just sort of run of the mill plays. So analytics looks at everything, looks at all the data. And when I got started, I used to tell people that I felt that football teams were farther ahead than like baseball or basketball teams were at the time. This is 18 years ago, because they had always analyzed, their opponents. That's what the quality control guy does, right? The quality control guy looks at your next opponent and what they've run in the last 5 games and how often they run and pass out of certain formations or certain personnel groupings. And in effect, that's analytics. What's happened since, and especially in the last couple of years, is analytics on the outside have gone, past what a lot of what teams were doing back in the day. But now teams have gone past that because teams have access to so much more data. So the teams that want to be on the cutting edge of analytics have access to all that next-gen stats tracking data and can do all kinds of interesting things with it. I mean, just from the interesting things that we've seen done in the Big Data Bowl, which is the NFL's big public competition where they make some of the next-gen stats public from, 2 years ago or whatever, and then you can come up with interesting analysis on that. Just from what we've seen those people do, like, for example, the whole formula that based on where the runner and the blockers and the defenders are at the time of a handoff, figures out the expected yardage on any run play. I think we can assume that inside of teams, they're doing stuff even more advanced than that with the current, and not using 2-year-old data, but using current data.
Yeah, and I like to describe the the kind of the casual sports fan on Twitter that sort of dabbles in stuff like that. I mean, pretty much myself as like the watches Moneyball once person. And it kind of, I feel like a lot of this stuff does actually go back all the way to Bill James and then kind of his influence on Billy Beane. And it seems to me like baseball is kind of the earliest adapter of advanced data in sports, and it's kind of exploded in that sport. Would you kind of say that's accurate? And how would you compare how they're used in football compared to a sport like baseball, where at this point it feels like there's a pretty clear blueprint to kind of building a championship contender?
I mean, there were elements where analytics in football took the first couple steps early on. I mean, for example, because it was a salary cap league, and because teams tended to be run by families and owned by families, you tended to have non-players, not former ex-players, but business people in business jobs in the NFL who would do analysis on things like salary cap values. But it was far behind what we're doing now. And so baseball then caught up to and then way past it. But I don't think we've answered the question yet as to what's the best way to build an NFL team other than quarterback. There's still a lot of questions, I think, about how to put your roster together. And so I think there's, you asked about sort of baseball becoming sort of homogenous. I don't think that problem exists right now in the NFL.
Right. And that ties perfectly into what our next question was going to be. And, part of the reason being that we've seen so much discourse, including some of our friends, that, the Chiefs are the perfect model right now for how to win a Super Bowl in 2021. And of course, it's pretty hard to argue with that as they're returning and, nearly made one 2 years ago. And at this point, do you think that it's the perfect marriage between Andy Reid and one of the best quarterbacks, especially, in his generation, and Patrick Mahomes? Do you think that's as much of a factor as it is their construction towards a high-flying passing attack, or does one kind of beget the other?
I mean, I think one begets the other. Listen, Andy Reid has always favored passing over running to an extent that goes further than almost anybody else in the league. And he's never had a quarterback this good. That being said, Kansas City can't be the perfect model in that not every team can be like, go draft the best quarterback in the league, right? Like there has to be a model for building your team that's not go draft the best quarterback in the league, because only 1 out of 32 teams can have that guy. So you have to figure out other ways to have a good quarterback and to build around that quarterback and to make it. But I mean, I do think it's the perfect marriage of a pass-first offensive guru with a great quarterback and a team that's been well built. Now we'll see what happens in the next couple of years, because this is, I believe, like the last year of Mahomes under his rookie deal. Once that gigantic extension he signed kicks in, will they be able to keep all the talent, and what does that mean? What happens to the team after that? It's not like because they have the best quarterback in the game, they're about to run off 12 straight Super Bowls.
Yeah, and in that sense, I'm kind of curious, like, what is, I don't know if, like, you could even quantify this, but, like, how much stock do you put into, like, you need to, like, win a Super Bowl on that rookie quarterback contract deal? Because, like, it is something we've definitely seen happen a little bit, like, with Russell Wilson in Seattle. It sort of happened with the Eagles a couple years ago. How much stock do you put into, like, you need to get it done in that window, or you're kind of, like, screwed, basically?
You don't need to, but it sure is helpful. I mean, you also have the Tom Brady marry a woman who makes more money than you do so you can take a sub-market contract and allow your team to get more talent. That's a model also, depending on who your quarterback is married to. But
she is a model.
That is a model, yeah.
It's a model that involves a model. But I think, no, it's better. I mean, having a quarterback on a rookie deal is absolutely an advantage, but it's not the only way to win a title.
Definitely.
The model.
The model model.
The next episode of Seinfeld coming out.
Yeah, we're gonna need to requisition FO or somebody to write that up. But outside of the Chiefs, like, there's a ton of, I think, other pretty interesting approaches. I think we see that happen kind of with our team here in Baltimore. And we were kind of curious, like, as far as, like, team building in the NFL, from your point of view, who are some of the other ones that you find yourself fascinated by rather than just Kansas City?
Well, Buffalo is a really well-built team. We thought going into this year, we were like, okay, Buffalo is probably the best team in the league outside of the quarterback position. You know, they've got good coaching, they've got good management, they've got strong defense, they've got receivers. You know, boy, it's too bad about that quarterback. and then the quarterback took this gigantic step forward that nobody was expecting. So, I mean, I think Buffalo is a very well-built team. Baltimore is interesting because they're doing it differently, right? The concept behind Baltimore is, what if running was not less efficient than passing? Like, what if you could run the ball so well that it became as efficient as passing, and you really could build the offense around the run to a much greater extent? Because usually passing is more efficient than running. And so it's, you know, in the analytics world, we're always like, run less, pass more. But if you could run as well as Baltimore did in 2019, you don't have to say run less, pass more, because the running is so efficient that it becomes as efficient as the passing game. And obviously, a big part of that is having a mobile quarterback and making the quarterback part of a running game. And so you see more teams in the league going towards having mobile quarterbacks, and the younger quarterbacks now are almost all mobile. There really aren't, you know, you have to kind of rack your brain to think of a young quarterback who's just a pocket guy. Like even a guy like Justin Herbert will run sometimes.
Yeah, and then thinking to this upcoming draft class, Trevor Lawrence, extremely mobile, and as you know, as beautiful as a pocket passer as they come. Moving on to, you know, some other, especially news relevant segue into a more non-traditional strategy. We see the Rams this week acquiring Matthew Stafford, and Les Snead has spoken about the idea that he kind of the one in the hand is worth more than two in the bush ideal with Jalen Ramsey, and then doing it again with Matthew Stafford. And what is your take on how Les Snead has sort of reinvented himself in that sense that acquiring talent is more worthwhile than those unknown draft picks?
The problem with that is that the unknown draft picks come with low prices.
Right.
And the veteran talent that you get comes with high prices. And so the Rams are built on a very, very strong stars and scrubs model where they really have to hit on their undrafted free agents and their low-round draft pick, guys like Darius Williams that they pick up from other teams. And they have hit on some of those guys, like, for example, Darius Williams. But the drop from their top players to their, you know, that's a team that, for one thing, is very susceptible to injury. Like, they were pretty healthy this year, except for Whitworth at left tackle. If they ever had a couple of major injuries, they would be terrible.
So, like, what is kind of your take on how things are going to shake out for them in this coming year? I know we're not even through the Super Bowl yet, but like, if you had to kind of put sort of a grade on, I guess, this trade, I don't know, like if you would even want to grade it, but like, how do you think this is going to work out? Because like, I feel like this is an all-in move where it's like Jared Goff couldn't win us a Super Bowl. Stafford has to be that guy now. What is kind of your overall viewpoint on that?
Oh, I mean, I think they're better in the short term, right? They traded away long term for short term, so they should be better in the short term. I think the one thing is that we always talk about defense tends to regress more than offense. They cannot count on that defense being as good again next year, especially with a new defensive coordinator. So, you know, I think everyone who believes, okay, the Rams are going to stick the same defense on the field, only they're going to be better on offense, and now they're the favorite in the conference, is sort of ignoring the fact that their defense is going to come back to the pack a bit.
Definitely. And kind of sticking with that conversation too, that quarterback market, it seems like it's set to look like it never really has before this offseason. The first domino already fell. We just touched on that. If you were a GM, what kind of haul would you be willing to give up for a guy like Deshaun Watson? And like, if you can't get him, how would you value like pursuing somebody like Kirk Cousins, for example?
Oh, Cousins is the player who has the biggest discrepancy between what stats say about him and what film people say about him, as I think any other player in the league. If you saw a team sign a guy to that amount of contract and then try to trade him, you, I think, would be hesitant. Why is he not enough for the Vikings, given how much money they paid to get him? Like, that they would see something else as an upgrade. Is that, you know, why do you want to have that? I would throw the world at Houston for Watson. There's never been a player of his ability and his amount of future potential that, at his age, been available in the NFL. The closest thing was Fran Tarkenton when he was traded from the Vikings to the Giants in whatever year that was. But I don't think even then he was as good as what Watson is now. So you've got 4 first rounders. Yeah, I'd offer it.
Definitely. It is incredibly valuable to have someone who's been as efficient as he is and able to push the ball down the field as well. Moving into the team that we cover, the Ravens, and we briefly touched on them. They have obviously, everybody loves to say they have zagged while the league zigs. It's the classic idea to discuss, them not being a high-flying passing team. It's had mixed results in the playoffs so far. How would you grade around their approach to building for Lamar Jackson and building around Lamar Jackson up to this point?
Yeah, I think that the playoff loss last year was, it seemed a little different than the playoff loss the year. Last year it was like the 4th and 1s just didn't work out. They made the right decisions and then the gambles just didn't work. And then, Jackson actually had good yardage for the game, if I remember correctly. So I don't think last year's is an example of the idea that the Baltimore offense doesn't work in the playoffs. That being said, I do think they need to improve the passing game. Proving that the running game can be as efficient as the passing game doesn't mean you don't try to also improve the passing game. And I think that they could definitely be a better passing team. But what they've done is very interesting. And look, the Patriots tried to do something similar this year. It didn't work. They did not have anywhere near as much offensive success as what Baltimore's had. With the same kind of run first, we're going to have a running quarterback. We're going to run first sort of philosophy. So it's a tough thing to do to build the team the way Baltimore has.
Yeah, and I think from our point of view, like the passing game definitely does need to be revamped to an extent, or maybe not even revamped, but just improved. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding among Ravens fans, and we're in the trenches with them on Twitter and stuff, about the passing offense. I think namely, there's a lot of citing of them being the quote unquote worst passing offense because they had the least amount of yards. And as the creator of DVOA, which you hit on, and we'll get to that as kind of our defense against that line, but how would you first sum up what DVOA is and sort of the backstory behind you creating it?
Sure. The idea is that you judge every play's success based on the down and distance, right? So, you need to make a successful play, you basically need 45% of needed yards on first down, 60% on second down, and 100% on third down. And so the idea is that the more yardage you get, the better. It's a success to get 5 yards on first down, but it's even better to get 8, and it's even better than that to get 10, and whatever. You judge how successful a team is compared to a league average baseline that's adjusted for the situation and for the opponents that they faced. And that's where DVOA comes from.
And what do you think some misconceptions about DVOA is? It has really become one of the preeminent measurements and weighted statistics or weighted formulas to figure out the efficiency and getting to the efficiency. So what are there misconceptions about, if you can think of it?
I don't honestly know what are the misconceptions about. I think the biggest thing is just not understanding where it comes from or thinking that I'm making sort of subjective decisions. There's nothing
Right.
subjective. I'm just using the yardage totals that come from the league for every play, and what the down and distance was. But I think sort of misunderstanding it is more common than misperceptions of it, if that makes any sense. Once I explain it, I think it's fairly easy to understand. 0 is average. Better than 0 is good for offense and bad for defense because it means more scoring. Lower than 0 is good for defense and bad for offense.
Yeah, I think maybe my favorite quote that I saw regarding it was, I forgot even who said it, but some incredibly smart person on Twitter said it was dorks value only analytics, which I got a kick out.
Yes, that was Rob Demoski, who covers the Packers for ESPN. He said dorks value only analytics. So we had T-shirts made.
That's awesome. Man, I got to get me one of those. I'm glad we were able to touch on that and kind of bringing it back to the Ravens in that point. Like they were the 11th ranked offense by DVOA in 2020. They were the third most efficient in rushing offense, 17th in passing efficiency. And obviously, like 17th, that isn't good, but it isn't like this last ranked offense thing that I was hitting at earlier and kind of like probably mediocre by your metrics. So what are some things that you saw from the Ravens passing offense this past year that encouraged you, and maybe some things they need to work on, if you could think of any?
I mean, the encouragement is that they were so much better in the last 5 weeks of the season. I mean, last 5 weeks of the season, they were one of the top passing games in the league. The most important thing I would say, and I would get most of your listeners know this, the reason why the standard NFL rankings by total yardage are garbage, I mean, there's a couple of reasons. One is that what's much more important than total yardage is what you do per play. Right? They pass less than other teams doesn't mean that they're the worst passing team just because they do it less. The other thing is that pass yardage and run yardage in the NFL are so dependent on the game script and, are you winning the game? And obviously you start running the ball more and passing the ball less when you have a lead in the fourth quarter. And so Baltimore had a lot of leads in the fourth quarter, so they would pass the ball less. So DVOA gets rid of those problems. I think the biggest issue is the receivers just have stagnated. They went out and got those young receivers, and they just haven't developed. They don't get open to the same extent as you wanted to. I think the best thing for Baltimore would be if they could find some kind of number one receiver in free agency, and I'm sure Allen Robinson is a name that's come up a lot, that knocks Hollywood Brown then to the speed guy at number 2, and it knocks Boykin down to the number 3. And like everybody fits their role much better if you bring in that number 1 guy.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite, I can't remember. It's almost like the commandments. You have them on the Football Outsiders website, like the basic fundamentals of what your website is.
Yeah, I think we just call it FO Basics.
FO base, yes. One of my favorite ones that I personally maybe it was like a personal bias or something because I thought of that as long as I've been watching football, and I kind of relate it to the Patriots and their obviously incredible run with Tom Brady. But one of my favorite principles is that the better indicator of a successful team is a team that consistently beats lesser opponents as opposed to consistently beating elite opponents or very good opponents. And that's why I think you see the New England Patriots continuously going, 11-5, 12-4, 13-13 for so many years. And do you think that the Ravens' run-first approach and getting those fourth quarter leads and being able to run the clock out really establishes that? And there's just kind of been this entire conversation about how the Ravens don't necessarily beat all of the best opponents, yada, yada, yada. But it just feels like such an undervalued measurement of a good team to just continuously beat down the teams that you're supposed to.
Yeah, the biggest thing is just close wins against bad teams are not a good sign of a dominant team. Now, Kansas City is messing with that this year because of the whole flip the switch concept, the idea that Kansas City sort of took it easy in the fourth quarter of games. In the second half of the season, they let their opponents get close. And that's why they had 8 straight wins where they didn't cover the spread, and then they were going to flip the switch and turn it on in the playoffs, which so far they've done, which is something that no NFL team has ever really successfully accomplished. We've seen that kind of theory in the NBA, but never really in the NFL. But as far as beating bad teams big, that is the best sign of a good team. And the fact that Baltimore's been able to do that over the last couple of years is a sign that they're a strong team.
How much are you guys able to kind of quantify for those human elements, if at all? Like they're kind of getting bored or like taking their foot off the gas or whatever, like people
We haven't. Still working on, for example, does what Kansas City did this year mean that you should lower the weight of plays when a team has a big lead in the fourth quarter? I don't know. We have more analysis to do on that.
Right. And, Jackson's contract with the Ravens is going to be up soon. They've already been talking about extending him this coming offseason. It seems like this offseason, at the very least, you've touched on it already, is like the only logical improvements that you can really make are to the passing offense. If you were Eric DeCosta, would you be looking at this offseason kind of as a time to sort of go all in and address those issues by any means?
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that should be a Super Bowl contender. So absolutely, they're in the window, and you need to add to the team as much as you can to get something done during the window. Absolutely.
Right. And as much as things ended in an ugly fashion in Buffalo, the Ravens did get over that proverbial playoff hump against the Titans. And that's kind of how they constructed their team this past year, was to make sure that a game like that divisional round of 2020 Titans loss didn't happen again. And John Harbaugh has really reinvented himself over the past couple of years, and doing so becoming something of like the prince who was promised is a phrase that is thrown around of John Harbaugh in the analytics community. And what are some things that you and your more data-driven colleagues like about Harbaugh's approach?
I think that might be me who called him that.
Oh, well, then there we go.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, we love the fact that he's aggressive on fourth downs. I mean, that's the biggest thing. We love the use of play action and the use of motion, but especially we love the aggressiveness on fourth downs. I mean, the analytics world has been harping on fourth downs since before there was an analytics world, when it was just an economics professor named David Romer out at Berkeley writing a paper on this, and I don't remember when Romer's paper came out. It was right at the beginning of Football Outsiders. So there really was no football analytics world. My God, we've been harping on the fourth down thing forever. And the league has finally, in the last 3 or 4 years, moved in our direction. And Harbaugh has really led that as the most aggressive coach in the league over the last couple of years. So we love that, especially because, one of the common reasons that's given for why you should not go for it on fourth and short is that your team doesn't have the right strengths to do so. But Baltimore has the right strengths to do so, right? The running game is really good. Like, if there was
by your metrics, you guys have the power running success, the 3rd and 2, 4th and 2 or shorter.
Yep.
And the Ravens are up there every single year. And I think that gets overlooked. That you want to look at Baltimore averaging, 5.5, 6 yards a carry, but their ability to consistently convert those power situations, as Football Outsider refers them, has been so paramount for this.
So they go for it more often and they convert more often. So, he recognizes that in fact, it's not just that he recognizes that he has a team that can convert those situations. They may have built specifically to be a team that can convert those situations because they knew they were going to go for them more often.
Definitely. And I'm glad that you kind of arrived there on your own talking about Harbaugh there, because that was kind of one of our last ones that we had here for you. The fourth down decision making. I mean, they have this, I'm not sure if you're familiar, maybe you are. They have the fourth down czar, Daniel Stern, who's like our age, who's like up in the booth, kind of getting in Harbaugh's ear, telling him when to go, when to kick. To your knowledge, is that like a regular practice for teams, or is that something that the Ravens were kind of at the cutting edge of?
I know that a couple of other teams who've had somebody like that, but it's certainly not completely widespread around the league.
Absolutely. And getting into the cutting edge, and now that we've kind of gone through the beginning and how you started out and where the league is at now, going forward on fourth down, you mentioned the use of motion and play action, and those are kind of the favorites of the analytics community. Where do you see the sport going in regards to its use of analytics and how it might change the game and tangible changes that we might see as a result of it in the next 5 or 10 years? I mean, we're currently at the point right now where it's like 2000 and the internet just came about in the last 10 years with analytics. It feels like there's a revolution that's been happening throughout football.
I don't know how much more slanted towards offense the game can go. And my feeling is that with the arrival of analytics departments on teams analyzing the next gen tracking data, that maybe not us in the public, but the teams are going to move forward in their understanding of defense and figure out ways to slow down offenses, because the nature of football has always been cyclical. That you go through these offensive dominated periods and defensive dominated periods, and at some point somebody's going to come up with a defense that's going to slow these things down a little bit.
And the Rams have done that a little bit. The two high structures, the quarters and cover six, has been the kind of return fire to the RPO passing game.
Yep. And I think analytics will help the way, because having that tracking data for defense allows you to, not just guess at what can work, but to actually see what works.
Yeah, I think that's a super interesting point. You've made a ton of super interesting points hopping on here with us for what's looking like a nice, tight little half-hour chat, Aaron. We really appreciate your time. This was awesome, a bucket lister for both of us. Like I said, thanks for hopping on with us. Why don't you go ahead and plug your stuff, plug your social media before we get you out of here?
Yeah, sure. FootballOutsiders.com, of course, is the website. Lots of Super Bowl preview material coming this week, as well as if you want our premium FO Plus product that includes a big database of historical DVOA, picks against the spread, fantasy projections, both preseason and weekly during the season. It's 55% off right now in celebration of Super Bowl 55. So check that out at FootballOutsiders.com. My Twitter handle, for those who want to follow me on Twitter, is FO_ASchatz, which is ASCHATZ.
And I can't recommend those products enough. They're a big help in putting this show together. And for that, like I said, thanks a ton for hopping on with us, man. You have yourself a great rest of the week here, previewing the big game.
Yeah, now I'm back to thinking of nothing but Kansas City and Tampa Bay for the next couple of days.
Well, we hope we provided a little bit of a respite for you here before you jump back into it.
A little bit.
All right, man. Thanks.
Thank you, Aaron.
All right, thanks a lot. Appreciate you guys. See you later. All right, God bless. Hell yeah.